So let's give a warm Aztec welcome to Coach Mike Donahue.
Thank you, Virginia. Thank you, Anani. Pleasure to be here, back on campus. I'm going to be here Monday as well in 2 different classrooms. I've met, I think, about half of you in this room. Can you guys hear me well in the back? You guys seem so far away. I almost had to move all the tables closer. That's how much I miss you guys already. Let's see these ones over here who I know. So I'm glad you can hear me. Thank you so much for that introduction, and Anani, great summary of the leadership minor and now major. That is exciting, especially for anyone that's undeclared or thinking about a minor or ready to shift to a major. Consider it. It's amazing and applicable to real world stuff. So I'm thrilled to be here, and I do have quite a bit of experience in interviewing, not just hundreds and hundreds of interviews. I conducted over 1,000, believe it or not. I even went to interviewing school, like how to conduct interviews. So I had a big career in technology, managing lots of people and leading organizations throughout the United States and the globe. So I love this leadership minor, the major, the school. My daughter goes to this school. Last year I had 3 kids in college, so I feel like I'm connected to all of you, and an honor and a privilege to be here. So let's see. So this talk also is going to be more of a workshop. It's not going to be a lecture. In fact, I don't even like that term, so you guys got to be ready to participate. I don't know if you read the fine print, but you're going to be doing a little work today. We're going to be preparing for the future. And it's going to be, I believe, very impactful. And I want to start off by asking you to imagine this. You're sitting in an interview across from the interviewer at a table. You're interviewing for an exciting job. You're a little bit nervous, a little bit stressed, but also excited. The interview starts off with some pretty easy questions. They call those common questions or introductory questions. Then the heat turns up just a little bit, and questions start coming at you like, can you tell me a time in the workplace where you had a conflict with another employee? How did you address it? What did you learn? And what techniques do you use today to work on those type of situations if they arise again? Or maybe another question. Have you ever had an encounter with a cranky customer? Someone who was very dissatisfied? How'd that go? What did you learn? And how do you incorporate those lessons into your everyday work life? Or a third question might come at you, something about stress. They may ask you a question like, tell me a time when you were on the job, you had a stressful situation. How did you handle it? What did you learn? And how do you incorporate those lessons going forward? Now, I forgot to tell you, this interview is pretty intense. There's a lot of people wanting this job that you want. There's, let's say, a girl from UCSD. She wants it bad. There's some dude from UCLA. He thinks he's going to get it. Then there's a polished student from USC who's been coached and groomed for this opportunity. But somehow, as these questions are coming at you, you pause and you reflect on the workshop that you attended in December 2023. And you use some of the lessons you're going to learn in the next hour or two. And guess what? The competition was behind you, and you got the job. So let's give yourself a round of applause. So that may sound imaginary or fictitious, but it's coming. These behavioral interview questions are hard. Their interviewers are trained to give them to you, and you got to be light on your feet and be able to handle it. We're going to show you some super cool techniques today, and then we're going to role play, and you guys are going to practice. So these questions come at you. As a matter of fact, my daughter, who just graduated from a school in Los Angeles this last year, she just finished in the spring, she recently had an interview at Amgen. Amgen, you may know, is a big biotech company in Thousand Oaks. She had 7 behavioral interview questions in a row. Now, the good news is she was prepared. We're going to show you exactly how she prepared. She nailed it, got the dream job. She's in this management rotation program where she goes to one area of the business for 9 months, another area of the business for 9 months, another area, then she gets to select where she wants to work. Pretty cool job. She beat out a lot of competition. We're going to show you guys some jujitsu techniques today where you're going to be able to outshine, outwit the competition, and nail it. So I came up with this kind of cool acronym that I'm like so proud of. So remember I told you I had 3 kids in college last year, so I'm always coaching. I coached basketball for 8 years, football, and coached a lot of employees, a lot of people, and now I like Coach Mike versus Mr. Donahue. That makes me feel so old, so bear with me on that. And this new acronym I'm so pumped about, UPS, we should be able to remember it, right? 3 letters. So the U stands for understanding or studying. It's like, how do we remember all this cool stuff we're gonna get today, and that you're gonna get in your econ class later today or tomorrow, and your calculus class, and your psychology class, and your music class? How do you remember it, right? So I'm really into like coaching my kids on retention, right? Because there's gotta be techniques that we can remember things better than others. So it starts with understanding, studying it, like you're studying a subject matter, maybe it's econ, right? Then you're gonna practice it, you're gonna draw some formulas down, you might write some definitions down, you're gonna be practicing. But then the key, the last one is S, which is share it and teach others. This is when you differentiate from other people and how you really, really learn something. So when you teach it, even if it's to your roommate, your sister, maybe to yourself in the mirror, but when you're teaching it, that's when it sinks in. And I learned this from a really neat guy, his name is Mike Mulligan, a mentor of mine, and I used to do talks about Ernest Shackleton. I still do occasionally. He's a great leader, he's a hero of mine. And he said, Mike, you think you know a lot about Shackleton? I know his birthday, when he died, what his favorite color was. This guy was around in the early 1900s. He goes, you think you really know Shackleton? Wait till you teach it. And sure enough, I started teaching it, and my comprehension level went through the roof. So today, when we learn some of the things that we're gonna learn, I'm gonna ask you, please commit to UPS, understanding, studying it, and then share it. I might even ask you later, tell me one person you're gonna share it with. Put you on the spot. It can't be that easy, right? There it is. How do I remember it? Okay, so let's talk about the biggest flaw that candidates make during job interviews. Now remember, I've conducted 1,000, so I've seen a lot of them. And I recently talked to one of my best friends who's been interviewing a ton of people in biopharma and some other areas, and we were trading notes about some of these poor people that are pretty qualified, but they just kind of biff the interview, and they may like them, but there's sometimes multiple people will interview you, so you gotta get the green light from everybody. So the biggest flaw that people make is rambling. So we're actually gonna go through 6 slides here in a second on how not to ramble. That's how big a problem rambling is. And we'll practice, we're gonna put you on the clock when we do the behavioral interview questions just to kind of help you not become a rambler. And when we're nervous, and you've probably seen this, maybe you've done it yourself, when you're nervous, you just met somebody, you're in a new group or something, we often ramble. It's kind of human nature. But good awareness skills, good self-awareness, we're going to catch ourselves and make sure we don't ramble. What we want to do is be concise. Why do we want to be concise? First of all, it highlights your communication skills, right? So if you can communicate quickly, clearly, that means you probably have good communication skills. You're concise. Guess what? Most of the jobs you're being interviewed for, they want good communication skills. So being concise in the interview, and not only are you going to get the job, but it's also going to highlight your communication skills. How about confidence? Let's say someone said, hey, tell me 2 characteristics that best describe you. And you're prepared. That's what we do, SDSU, right? Prepare for our interviews. We don't go in cold, we don't go in sloppy. And you might say, my 2 characteristics that best describe me, I think, is perseverance and courage. Courage, because I'm really not afraid of new challenges. And perseverance, I don't give up. Confident, right? Concise, Good communication skills, multiple boxes checked right there. And then you want to be concise because the interviewers, in many cases, are tired, are looking at multiple candidates. They want to get the information from you concisely, clearly, not have to sift through rambling or anything like that. So you're doing that with paper. Okay, how are we going to eliminate these things? First one, so you practice the common questions. We're going to actually get to a few examples of those. Common questions like, tell me about your background. Please explain your resume. Why would you like to work here? So you're going to be concise on those, probably 60 seconds or less. You got to get yourself on the clock. So we're going to talk about this format where it's a framework, especially for these tough questions that I just described. So you're going to have a bunch of little stories in your little ammo box that you'll be able to come out with. And it'll be a framework that we're going to talk about this STAR method in a second. But that's going to stop you from rambling because you're going to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Now we're going to have to slow down our speech at times. Because when we're rambling, we're often talking rather quickly. We typically talk at 130 words a minute. So make sure you're not going 200. And sometimes people do when they're excited, nervous, stressed, which interviews can indeed be. Ideally, you have an interviewer that helps put you at ease. I used to feel I was really good at that because I wanted to see their true self. So I figured, put them at ease, and then maybe I'll get to see their true self, whether I'm going to hire that person or not. But not all interviewers are pros. Sadly, there's a lot of amateurs. So you have to size up that interviewer and figure out what you have, whether you have a professional, whether you have an analytic, you may have a super chatty person. That these are all okay, but you just need to size them up and then adjust accordingly. So slow down that speech, 130, not 230. And you can always pause. Seems like an eternity when you pause. Like right there. I mean, that was 4 seconds. That's not an eternity. So pause before you answer. These are how do we eliminate. I mean, that's how important rambling is. And then you can always ask questions to stop your rambling, catch yourself. And you're like, oh my God, I got so much oxygen, I'm blowing out of the room here. How am I going to, why don't I ask a question and slow down my rambling and let them talk for a little bit? Because the more you can get the interviewer to talk, often that is a good thing. Because people feel good often when they're talking. Endorphins are flowing, heart rate is pumping. They feel pretty good about it. Now, professional interviewers should be talking to you only about 25% of the time. Sometimes when they're talking 50 or more, that's a good sign because they're talking about themselves, the company, how great it is to work there, and that's a good thing. And they probably feel really good about that interview. It's over, it's like, love that candidate. It happens. So asking great questions and being prepared, which we'll talk about in a second, is really, really important. And as a matter of fact, I was working with an SDSU student just last week about preparing for an interview that he has next week at a big retailer, Target. And we were talking about being prepared. And we were talking about doing a little research about the company. And I think the chairman's name is like Don Coleman. And in that interview, you may want to weave in some big announcement that they had. Or any news release, doesn't have to be a big announcement. So you may somehow weave in the middle of the conversation that I saw your CEO and chairman, Don Coleman, mentioned in a press release, I think it was, how much customers appreciate the fact that you're now locking up certain items at Target. I thought that was really interesting. I had to read on, and it was pretty cool because the explanation was due to supply chain issues, a lot of times products aren't there. So the customers actually like the fact that things are locked up, so less theft means more product, means they can satisfy their needs. So you just wove that in, or maybe a version of that, into a conversation. What box got checked? Okay, this guy or gal was prepared. This person knows the name of our CEO. This person's actually looked at a recent press release, which took me, by the way, 40 seconds to come up with this example. And they're on the money, and it appears that they appreciate our business plan and policy. There's probably more boxes. Okay, these are the type of common interview questions. Okay? So think of these, you gotta have tight, short, 30, 60-second questions, answers for these questions. And there's a couple books that you may want to consider. Two that I have in my library. Answering Behavioral Interview Questions or Amazon Interviews. It's actually a pretty cool book. There's all sorts, this is prepare you for Amazon interviews, but there's so much applicable to other interviews. And this one, lose the resume, land the job. Because resumes are important. They gotta be tight, they gotta be clean. But the one thing that's really interesting about resumes is that your interviewer may take 30 seconds looking at it. There might be a screening process that got you the interview, but do not assume that your interviewer has studied your resume and seen that you are in 3 clubs, where the president of this club accomplished this, where it had a leadership minor, took this particular class, or anything you highlight. Don't assume it. They really want to talk to you. So the resume is important to kind of get you there, but it's not going to carry you all the way to the finish line. Okay, so 150, you guys got to roll, like exactly. Dang. Can I write you a note that you're late? Okay. All right, so common questions and behavioral interview questions. I just gave you some examples. So one thing to keep in mind also as you're going through these practice runs is you always want to end with that last sentence, right? If you think about it, like today when we leave here, you're going to really remember those last few moments that we talked to each other. Or when you were talking to a friend for a long time and they said, by the way, you know, I love you as a friend. You may not even remember like the first 2 minutes of what they said, but that last moment, that parting moment, is important. Okay, so think of that as you're doing your method. So we're going to do a little role play here. So we're going to practice this STAR method where there's 4 parts to it. This is how you tell your story, like your little framework that I just talked about on these behavioral interview questions, right? So tell me about a stressful time you had on the job. What did you, how did you handle it, blah, 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 what I just said. So you're gonna recap the situation, you're gonna talk about the task at hand, then you're gonna talk about what action you took, and then the results. You gotta get all those into a nice, compact, 90-second story. Not 2 minutes, not 3. You go over 2 minutes, not, your interviewer is gonna look at you and say, why are they rambling? And they don't even have an awareness of how important my time is, or how they're rambling. So they're weak on awareness skills. They're definitely not respecting my time, and I don't even know what they're going on and on about. That's what the interviewer thinks. So no rambling. I'm so happy, guys.